George Russell has just been given the most dangerous warning of his Mercedes career. Toto Wolff was photographed with Max Verstappen for the second consecutive summer, only days after declaring that he would remove a Mercedes driver if the title fight became toxic. And the timing is brutal. Mercedes has won 8 of the first 11 races. Kimi Antonelli leads Russell by 59 points. Verstappen sits 6th, more than 100 points behind, and his reported Red Bull exit clause is now active. Mercedes insists Russell and Antonelli are secured for 2027. Verstappen's camp says Max wants to remain with Red Bull. But Wolff is publicly warning his drivers while maintaining a relationship with the most dangerous replacement in Formula One. And if Russell loses control of this championship battle, Toto may already know exactly who he wants waiting beside Antonelli. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this puts George Russell under so much pressure, you have to look beyond the photographs. There is no verified report that Russell was literally left speechless. There is no confirmed statement from him saying Toto Wolff promised Max Verstappen his seat. And there is no evidence that Mercedes has already agreed to replace either of its current drivers. But that does not make the situation harmless. Because in Formula One, pressure rarely begins with a signed contract. It begins with possibility. And right now, the possibility surrounding Verstappen is impossible for Russell to ignore. Mercedes has won 8 of the first 11 races. Kimi Antonelli has taken 6 victories. And by the summer break, the young Italian leads Russell by 59 points. That is already difficult enough. Russell entered this season as the experienced driver. He understood the team. He knew how Mercedes operated. He had already carried the responsibility of leading the project. Antonelli, by comparison, was still only in his second Formula One season. At the end of the previous year, he had gone 9 races without scoring a point. The expectation was clear. Russell should have been the safer championship bet. Then everything changed. Antonelli began winning. The confidence grew. The results followed. And suddenly, Russell was no longer the driver everyone expected to control the season. He was the driver chasing his younger teammate. That shift matters. Because expectation can become heavier than the car itself. When people expect you to win, every setback looks like failure. When your teammate arrives with less experience and begins beating you, every difficult weekend feels twice as painful. And Wolff openly acknowledged that pressure. He explained that Russell had been leading in Montreal before retiring. Mercedes later discovered an engine problem on his car. According to Wolff, that issue was costing around 0.2 of a second. That is not a tiny loss in Formula One. 0.2 can change qualifying positions. It can decide whether a driver starts near the front or becomes trapped in traffic. It can affect strategy before the race even begins. So Russell's position cannot be reduced to one simple conclusion. He has not struggled because he suddenly forgot how to drive. The car has failed him. Circumstances have hurt him. And some weekends have turned against him before he had a real chance to respond. But here is the problem. Championship tables do not explain context. They only show points. And the points show Antonelli ahead by 59. That is what Russell sees. That is what Mercedes sees. That is what Verstappen sees. And that is what makes the leaked photographs so damaging. Because at the exact moment Russell needs stability, Toto Wolff is being photographed with the most feared alternative on the grid. Again, that does not prove a negotiation. It does not prove a secret offer. The available source describes the meeting as social. Wolff and Verstappen were seen in the same holiday setting with their partners present. But this is the second consecutive summer that similar reports have appeared. And that pattern gives the story power. One holiday can be dismissed as coincidence. 2 summers create questions, especially when the people involved understand exactly how Formula One media works. Toto Wolff knows every photograph will be examined. Max Verstappen knows every meeting will create speculation. Their teams know it. Their managers know it. The entire paddock knows it. So even if nothing was negotiated, the image still sends a message. Mercedes and Verstappen remain close enough for the possibility to survive. And that is all it takes to increase the pressure on Russell. Imagine being told your position is secure. Then imagine seeing your boss spending time with the strongest possible replacement. The contract may still exist. The public support may still exist. But the feeling changes. You start watching every word more carefully. Every mistake feels larger. Every difficult weekend feels more dangerous. and every comparison becomes impossible to escape. Russell is not only being compared with Antonelli anymore, he is being compared with Verstappen. That is an entirely different level of pressure. Antonelli is the teammate Russell can fight directly. Verstappen is the shadow he cannot fight on the track. If Russell beats Antonelli, the Verstappen speculation may weaken. If Russell loses ground, it grows. If Russell becomes frustrated publicly, Wolff's warning returns. And if the Mercedes rivalry becomes destructive, the strongest replacement in Formula One remains visible in the background. That is why Wolff's ultimatum matters so much. He said he would not allow another toxic teammate battle. He said it would not happen to him again. He said it would not happen to Mercedes again. And then he made the consequence clear. He would take a driver out. Those words were not aimed only at Russell. Antonelli is under the same warning. But Russell is the driver currently behind. That changes how the message is heard. When the championship leader receives a warning, it sounds like control. When the driver 59 points behind receives the same warning, it can sound like danger. Because Russell cannot afford to accept second place quietly, he has to attack. He has to recover. He has to close the gap. But he must do all of that without creating the kind of conflict Wolff has already threatened to punish. That is an almost impossible balance. Race too cautiously, and the championship disappears. Race too aggressively, and the team may accuse you of putting Mercedes at risk. Question strategy too softly, and nothing changes. Question it too publicly, and the relationship may begin to fracture. Russell has to fight for himself while proving he is still fighting for Mercedes. And Antonelli faces the opposite problem. He has the lead. He has the momentum. He has 6 victories. But he cannot begin treating Russell like an enemy, because Wolff's warning applies to whichever driver crosses the line. That means both men enter the second half of the season under surveillance. Not official surveillance, psychological surveillance. Every radio message will be analyzed. Every wheel-to-wheel battle will be replayed. Every strategy disagreement will be treated as evidence. And the moment something goes wrong, Verstappen's name will appear. That is the real power of the leaked meeting. It turns an ordinary teammate dispute into a driver market crisis. If Russell and Antonelli collide, the conversation will not stop at lost points. People will ask whether Wolff is ready to replace one of them. If Russell has another difficult weekend, people will ask whether Verstappen would do better. If Antonelli ignores an instruction, people will ask whether even the championship leader is safe. The photographs do not need to prove anything. They only need to make those questions believable. But this story becomes even more uncomfortable when you look at Verstappen's position. He is 6th in the championship. He is more than 100 points behind Antonelli. And according to the source, he is mathematically out of the title fight. That means Verstappen is not looking at Mercedes as a distant fantasy. He is looking at the team currently dominating the new regulations. Mercedes has the fastest overall record. Mercedes has won 8 races. Mercedes has 2 drivers fighting near the front. Red Bull, meanwhile, is trying to convince Verstappen to remain committed. Reports suggest Red Bull has offered him a new contract running until 2029. That offer would remove the performance-based exit clause. And that detail reveals the battle happening underneath the public statements. Red Bull wants security. Verstappen wants evidence. The team wants him locked into the future. Verstappen can afford to wait and judge whether that future is worth accepting. According to the source, he has until October to decide. That gives him time to watch Mercedes. And it gives Mercedes time to watch its own drivers. If Russell recovers, Wolff has no reason to change the lineup. If Antonelli continues winning without creating conflict, the team remains stable. If both drivers work together, Verstappen may remain only a distant option. But if the rivalry explodes, the entire picture changes. Suddenly, Wolff's warning becomes real. Suddenly, one Mercedes seat may no longer feel protected. And suddenly, Verstappen's relationship with Wolff becomes much more than a holiday story. That is why Russell cannot treat the photographs as meaningless. He may believe nothing was discussed. He may trust Mercedes' public commitment. He may know his multi-year agreement remains in place. But Formula One contracts do not eliminate politics. They do not remove performance pressure. And they do not guarantee that a team will never change direction. Especially when the team principal has publicly said he is willing to remove a driver. There is another detail Russell must understand. Wolff is not chasing Verstappen from a position of desperation. Mercedes is already winning. That gives Toto enormous power. He does not need Max to rescue the team. He can keep the relationship warm. He can wait. He can observe. He can allow Red Bull to feel pressure. And he can allow Russell and Antonelli to understand that Mercedes has alternatives. That is much more dangerous than an open negotiation. An open negotiation can be denied or rejected. A quiet relationship remains available. It can sit in the background for months, maybe years. And then, when the right seat opens, it can suddenly become decisive. Russell knows how calculated Toto Wolff can be. The source describes Wolff as someone whose public appearances and statements are often interpreted carefully. Nothing about his position is casual. He understands image. He understands leverage. He understands timing. So, when Wolff threatens to remove a driver, then appears alongside Verstappen, people naturally connect the two events. That connection may be speculative, but the pressure it creates is real. And Russell now has only one way to destroy the story: performance. Not anger. Not denial. Not complaints about the photographs. Performance. He must close the 59-point gap. He must prove the engine problem and difficult weekends did not break him. He must show Wolff that the strongest version of George Russell is still inside the car. And he must do it without turning Antonelli into an enemy. That is the hardest part. Because Wolff still believes Russell can recover. He called him tough. He said the best drivers turn difficult situations around. He repeated that Russell could do it. Absolutely. That support matters. But it also creates a challenge. Wolff has defended him. Now Russell must justify that faith. Every race after the summer break becomes part of the answer. If Russell returns stronger, the narrative changes. The photographs become background noise. The title fight becomes competitive again. And Verstappen's name loses some of its power inside Mercedes. But if Russell continues falling behind, the story becomes more dangerous. The question will no longer be whether he can beat Antonelli. It will become whether Mercedes needs him at all. And once that question begins, Verstappen becomes the obvious comparison. Not because a deal has been confirmed. Not because Russell has already lost his seat. But because the strongest possible alternative is standing close enough to Toto Wolff for everyone to notice. That is why Russell's response matters more than anything he could say publicly. The source does not document him being speechless. It does not give us a dramatic reaction. But silence may actually be the smartest move. Because no statement can erase the photographs. No denial can reduce Antonelli's lead. No interview can change Mercedes' 8 victories. Russell's answer must come on the track. One qualifying session, one race, one victory, then another. That is how he can turn pressure into control. But until he does, the leaked meeting hangs over him. A reminder that Mercedes is winning without needing to chase. A reminder that Antonelli is already ahead. And a reminder that if Toto Wolff ever decides the team needs a different future, Max Verstappen may already be close enough to become it.